Good morning. I hereby call to order this first meeting of the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission for the year 2016. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. What a difference a month makes. In December, we were in hearing room 1 in the Keystone building and celebrating the fact that it was so warm as we entered into the Christmas holidays. In January, we are still in hearing room 1, but we are in the North Office building and celebrating the fact that we finished all the shoveling from the 30-plus inches of snow. And with that, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank our staff that worked so hard during that time period. We know we have several people that serve as our EPLO, and also we have individuals that handle our nightly calls with the utilities, as well as the Vice Chairman and I were on those calls. We worked with PEMA and the governor's office, and I was so excited with the fact that we had very few outages. Thank goodness, and I can't take any credit for that. That was definitely the utilities, and I want to thank our electric distribution companies for that, but also our other utilities that work hand in hand with them to make sure that everything was on and properly working. So thank you to all of you for the first storm that I had to handle during my time as chair here. I also want to thank my colleagues. I know I was receiving emails and text messages from them encouraging me, so I do want to thank them for that as well. So as we move on, for our first matter this morning, the agenda recognized Commissioner Coleman for the minutes for December 3rd, 2015.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've reviewed the minutes of our December 3rd, 2015 public meeting, and I move that they be approved as presented.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Vice Chairman Place. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. I recognize at this time Director Davis to lead us through our agenda for today's meeting.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning.
May it please this Honorable Commission, on behalf of your various offices and bureaus, we present for your consideration and disposition the following agenda items, commencing this morning with matters on behalf of the Bureau of Audits. It is recommended that the Commission adopt the recommendation appearing on page 1 of the public meeting agenda to release the audit report with regard to PECO Energy Company's smart meter cost recovery surcharge for the 12-month periods ended 6/30/11, 6/30/12, and 6/30/13.
So I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Whitmer, second by Commissioner Powelson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning now to matters presented on behalf of the Office of Special Assistance, commencing on page 2 of the public meeting agenda. It is recommended in omnibus fashion that the Commission adopt the staff recommendations, commencing with the recommendation in the proceeding involving the complaint of Angela DeLeon versus PECO Energy Company, continuing with the remaining item on page 2 as well, as all items appearing on pages 3 and 4 through and including the recommendation at the bottom in the proceeding involving the PPL Electric Utilities Corporation petition for expedited approval to amend its default service program.
So I have a motion to approve the staff recommendations.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coleman, second by Commissioner Whitmer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
At the top of page 5, in the proceeding involving the formal complaint of Melvin D. Williams versus Duquesne Light Company, there is a joint motion of Vice Chairman Place and Commissioner Coleman, as well as the statement of Commissioner Whitmer.
Do I have a motion to call up the staff recommendation for consideration?
So.
I have a motion by Commissioner Powelson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Whitmer. Under discussion, I will call on Vice Chairman Place.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like our statement entered into the record as if I had read it in its entirety. Before the Commission are the exceptions of Duquesne Light Company to the initial decision in this matter. The initial decision sustains the complaint that Duquesne did not provide reasonable service, imposes a civil penalty, and directs Duquesne to repair damage to complainant's sidewalk that occurred when Duquesne replaced a utility pole. Upon review of the evidence and applicable law, we propose to resolve Duquesne's exceptions as follows. We propose to grant Duquesne's exceptions regarding the application of the hearsay rule. We also propose to grant its exceptions relating to the complaint, investigation, and report in part. Therefore, we do not believe that a penalty is warranted. However, we propose to deny Duquesne's exceptions relating to the alleged sidewalk damage. We believe the complainant has established a prima facie case that Duquesne did not provide reasonable service when it replaced a utility pole and damaged complainant's cement sidewalk. The evidence provided includes Mr. Williams' testimony that Duquesne caused damage to his sidewalk. According to Mr. Williams at hearing, this damage did not exist prior to Duquesne replacing the utility pole. We do believe that Duquesne successfully rebutted the complainant's prima facie. We do not believe that Duquesne successfully rebutted the complainant's prima facie case. This conclusion is based on critical evidence that we believe is missing from Duquesne's case. Of note, Duquesne did not offer as a witness any member of the two crews that actually worked on the pole replacement and sidewalk project. Therefore, Duquesne did not offer as a witness any crew member with firsthand knowledge of the condition of the sidewalk at the time the crews arrived on the scene to perform the work. Based upon these facts, we believe the complaint should be sustained, finding that Duquesne provided unreasonable service when it installed a utility pole and damaged complainant's cement sidewalk. We emphasize, however, that the outcome of this motion is fact-sensitive and is based on the unique circumstances and facts from the record in this case. As stated previously, we do not believe a civil penalty is warranted here. However, we propose to direct Duquesne to repair the damage to the complainant's cement sidewalk. Therefore, we move that the exceptions of Duquesne Light Company are granted in part and denied in part consistent with this motion. The initial decision is modified consistent with this motion. The Office of Special Assistants prepare an opinion and order consistent with this motion. Thank you.
We have a joint motion by Vice Chairman Place and Commissioner Coleman, and I will second the motion. Any discussion on the joint motion to amend the staff recommendation? I will recognize Commissioner Whitmer.
Madam Chair, I would like to be recorded as a dissent.
Any further discussion on the motion?
No.
If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Recognizing Commissioner Whitmer, the joint motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Whitmer as a dissent. Now on the staff recommendation as amended by the joint motion, any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I have a conflict statement.
Commissioner Whitmer.
I'd like just to point out that this matter was previously scheduled to be on the public meeting agenda of December 15th, 2015, and at that time, Shelby Linton-Ketty served as counsel on my staff prior to her departure from the PUC, and she accepted a position at Duquesne Light. Therefore, to avoid any appearance of impropriety, I wish to note that I have not been advised by Shelby Linton-Ketty regarding this matter in any way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the staff recommendation as amended by the joint motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye, me.
Commissioner Whitmer. The motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Whitmer as a dissent.
Continuing with the presentation of agenda items on behalf of the Office of Special Assistants, it is recommended in omnibus fashion that the Commission adopt the staff recommendations, commencing with the recommendation in the proceeding at the bottom of page 5 involving East Coast Resources LLC's application, and continuing with the first two items on page 6 through and including the recommendation in the proceeding involving Albert Buencristiano versus Philadelphia Gas Works.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Whitmer, second by Vice Chairman Place. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
It is recommended that the Commission adopt the staff recommendation in the formal complaint proceeding involving Susan Kreider versus Pico Energy Company, noting the statement of Commissioner Whitmer.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation? Do I have a second?
Second?
I have a motion by Commissioner Powelson, second by Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, I have my statement.
Commissioner Whitmer?
Thank you. I'd like my statement entered into the record as if I had read it in its entirety. Before us today for consideration and disposition is the petition for reconsideration filed by PICO seeking reconsideration of the September 3rd, 2015 order. The September order precluded Susan Kreider from introducing evidence on the issue of whether an opt-out option is available to smart meter installation. The September order also contemplated the ability for Ms. Kreider to present evidence that installation of the smart meter at her residence has caused deleterious health effects because the allegations were specific to her rather than general in nature. Upon further review of the case law on this issue, as well as PICO's petition, I agree with PICO that nothing alleged by Ms. Kreider is new, novel, or necessitates an additional hearing. I agree with PICO that this case should be dismissed as legally insufficient. This case is almost identical to a case that the Commission dismissed on preliminary objections brought against PICO by Gerald Smith. In both cases, the complainant alleged specific health effects from smart meters, asked to opt out, and to continue to use an analog meter. Because of the nearly identical fact pattern before us today, I must dissent from the majority's opinion. The decision today returns the matter for a hearing to determine whether there is evidence to support the claim that the complainant's health was affected by the smart meter and whether or not PICO's use of the matter constitutes unsafe or unreasonable service. I further disagree with today's action because a plain reading of Act 129 mandates universal deployment of smart meter technology without exception, and the legislature has not created an opt-out provision. Additionally, the Commission approved PICO's smart meter universal deployment plan filed with the requirements of Act 129 as just and reasonable. As such, there is no set of factual circumstances that could be presented that would afford Ms. Kreider the relief she seeks. This is particularly true in the instant proceeding because even with a hearing, the complainant is precluded from introducing evidence concerning whether a statutory provision, regulation, or order allows a customer to opt out of a smart meter installation. The better course of action would be to affirm our holding in Smith v. PICO, where under a similar fact pattern, we granted PICO's preliminary objections because PICO's installation of a smart meter complied with the relevant provisions of Act 129 and the Commission's related orders authorizing the development and implementation of smart meter plans, including no opt-out for customers. Unless and until such time as Act 129 is amended, there is no other possible outcome. For those reasons, I respectfully dissent.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitmer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Noting Commissioner
Opposed,
Whitmer.
yes.
The motion passes 4-1.
And on page 7 of the public meeting agenda, we recommend the adoption of the 2 joint petitions involving Verizon North LLC and Verizon Pennsylvania LLC and Laurel Highland Telephone Company for approval of interconnection agreements and associated amendments.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Vice Chairman Place, second by Commissioner Whitmer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning now to matters presented on behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, again in omnibus fashion, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the items commencing with the item at the top of page 8 in the proceeding involving PPL Electric Utilities Corporation letter petition pertaining to the PPL Sustainable Energy Fund of Central Eastern Pennsylvania, and continuing through the remaining items on pages 8, page 9, page 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 through and including the recommendation in the proceeding involving the quarterly earnings report.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Okay, I heard 2 people. So
Give it to John.
Commissioner Coleman moved. Commissioner Whitmer, second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Turning now to matters presented on behalf of the Law Bureau. It is recommended that the Commission adopt the 3 items appearing on page 15 through and including the proceeding at the bottom involving the petition of AA Taxi, Inc. for a waiver of the Commissioner's vehicle mileage requirements.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Vice Chairman Place, second by Commissioner Powelson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
On behalf of the Office of Administrative Law Judge, commencing on page 16 of the public meeting agenda, we recommend the adoption of the various recommendations, commencing with the recommendation in the proceeding involving the petition of the Borough of Hummelstown and ALJ Salapa's recommended decision appearing therein, as well as the various recommended and initial decisions remaining on pages 16 and 17 through and including ALJ Salapa's initial decision in the proceeding, the complaint proceeding involving Tanine Bennett versus Pico Energy Company.
Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Powelson, second by Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
And on page 18, with regard to the commissioners, we have the joint motion of Vice Chairman Place and Commissioner Coleman with regard to a review of issues relating to Commission certification of distributed antenna system providers.
Call on Vice Chairman Commissioner Coleman for the motion. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd ask that our joint motion be entered into the record as though I had read it in its entirety. To date, the Commission has issued certificates of public convenience to several telecommunication carriers that provide distributive antenna system, or DAS, service in Pennsylvania. DAS carriers gather, transport, and distribute wireless traffic through DAS network in combination with other network facilities and equipment. DAS carriers provide wholesale transport and backhaul services to providers that offer wireless services to retail end users. More recently, the Commission approved the application of SQF LLC to operate as a competitive access provider to offer DAS service in Pennsylvania. In supporting the Commission's decision to certificate SQF in Pennsylvania, my written statement noted that SQF's application was unopposed. My written statement also noted that by granting the application, we are treating SQF like the other DAS providers that have come before the Commission requesting a certificate of public convenience. At the same time, my statement in SQF noted that I believe that it is a legitimate question as to whether the Commission can certificate DAS providers. Therefore, our joint motion proposes to initiate a formal proceeding to examine the issues surrounding Commission's certification of DAS providers in Pennsylvania. The issues to be examined included, but are not limited to, whether DAS providers are public utilities under Pennsylvania law that can be certificated, and whether the Commission should or is required to certificate these carriers in furtherance of federal law. Our joint motion moves to open a proceeding to issue an information request in Appendix A attached to the joint motion for comment and reply comments. Therefore, we move that the Law Bureau prepare an order consistent with this motion. The Commission initiated a formal proceeding to examine the issues surrounding certification of DAS providers in Pennsylvania. The order include Appendix A to this motion shall be published in the Pennsylvania Bulletin. Comments shall be due within 45 days following publication in the Pennsylvania Bulletin, with reply comments due 25 days after comments are due. And lastly, that the Law Bureau, with the assistance of our Bureau of Technical Utility Services, shall review the comments and reply comments and all the information provided therein and present an order to the Commission for consideration.
Thank you. We have a joint motion of Commissioner Coleman and Vice Chairman Place. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Powelson. Under discussion, I recognize Commissioner Whitmer.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, I have a brief verbal statement. I want first to thank Commissioner Coleman and Vice Chairman Place for incorporating many of the issues that I believe are important to consider during the review of distributed antenna system companies. With that, I will be interested in how the parties handle the Commission's orders implementing TA 96, which have been in force for the last 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitmer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the joint motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Madam Chairman and Commissioners, that concludes the presentation of regular agenda items. Turning now to the carry-in agenda. It is recommended that the Commission adopt the staff recommendation in the proceeding involving the Philadelphia Gas Works petition to waive the provisions of Act 11 so as to increase their distribution system improvement charge, or DISC cap, as well as permission to levelize and annualize DISC-related charges, noting the statement of Vice Chairman Place as well as the statement of Commissioner Powelson.
Do I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation?
So moved.
I hear two people. Vice Chairman Place moves, second by Commissioner Powelson. Under discussion, I will call on Vice Chairman Place for his statement.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like my statement entered into the record as if I'd read it in its entirety. Before us is the petition of Philadelphia Gas Works for waiver of provisions of Act 11 to increase the distribution and system improvement charge cap and to permit levelization and distribution system improvement charges, also known as a DISC. I support our order, which approves the increase in the DISC from 5 to 7.5%, approves the annualization and levelization of these charges, and imposes additional reporting requirements to track the pipeline replacement activity and revenues related to this petition. It is clear from the record that PGW requires additional funds to more rapidly replace its aging pipe. With that said, I am also keenly aware of the additional burdens this places on the ratepayers of PGW. Therefore, I also strongly suggest that PGW work closely with the Commission staff to look for additional internally generated funds to supplement these DISC revenues for the purposes of further acceleration of their pipeline replacement investments. Sources of additional funding may, for example, be obtained through lower debt financing costs, use of working capital that does not put at risk PGW's debt ratings, additional operational savings identified in PGW's recent stratified management and operations audit report, as well as a concerted effort to improve customer collections. In short, by approving this DISC filing, we are asking PGW's ratepayers to contribute more toward the safety of their underground natural gas infrastructure. However, we also note However, we also need PGW to ensure every opportunity for efficiency has been pursued in order to accelerate this infrastructure replacement.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Place. Commissioner Powelson.
Thank you, Chairman, and I thank Vice Chairman Place for his statement as well, because I think we're saying a lot of the same things here this morning. But let me start with the proposed changes to PGW's DISC will certainly allow the company to accelerate its current level of spending on the replacement of at-risk gas mains by $11 million. PGW asserts that this increased spending will produce a 44% decrease in the projected timeline to replace at-risk mains from 86 years to 48 years based on its current LTIP. Now, for those of you in the audience here this morning, you notice we're going from 86 years to 48 years, and if we had a peer group analysis of UGI, Columbia, and other gas utilities, some of these replacement programs are now below 20 years. So it's a nice start, but to Commissioner Place, or Vice Chairman Place's point, this at-risk pipe is what keeps us up at night. And I think it's very important that the Commission here today, consistent with the hearings that we had at Drexel University, bringing all the interested parties together, that we all identified this common denominator of accelerating this cast iron bare steel replacement in such a way that, thank goodness for the DISC, you have a levelization of rates, an ability to capture through a DISC-like mechanism, an accelerated alternative rate-making mechanism to get needed pipe in the ground and replaced. Now, let me just say this. There's no question that PGW needs to accelerate its main replacement program. The system is old, it's leaky, and endangers the public safety, and I think through the leadership of our Gas Safety Director, Paul Metro, this has been reiterated 10 times over. And I look at Chief ALJ Rainey, who resides in the great city of Philadelphia, and he's nodding his head. He knows exactly what we're talking about when we talk about this issue of gas safety and how important it is and how we take it as a commission so seriously. The commission's concern that the state of PGW's mains are well documented, and I need not remind anybody in this room about the horrific event that happened a few years back where a young man, a young union worker, lost his life in the Tarsdale section of Philadelphia because of a massive gas explosion. Now, the draft order here, I think, does a superior job of reviewing the absolute need for this commission to act, and I think my colleagues are universal in our support for that. It's consistent with, again, the hearings that were held at Drexel University, and more recently, the work that was led by our PGW working group to get us to this point today, where one, the DISC will be increased, hopefully, with the appropriate votes, will be increased to 7.5% effective January 1. And the DISC recovery will be levelized and annualized, and separate tracking of revenues will be required until a new LTIP is filed with the Commission, and quarterly reports of ongoing efforts will be filed and reviewed by our Bureau of Audits and Technical Utility Services. Further, I believe that the reconciliation provision should also be approved. PGW has proposed that it be permitted to add up an additional 2.5% to the potential approval of a 7.5% DISC in the event of collections falling below the targeted revenue generation of $33 million per year. In my view, this is a reasonable request under the circumstances. First, I also think that customer impacts will be minimal. Customers' overall gas rates have significantly decreased over the last 5 years as natural gas prices have deteriorated. Another great story, and I'm getting in touch with my inner Commissioner Whitmer here, that if you look at gas purchase costs because of Marcellus shale molecules flowing into southeastern Pennsylvania and the benefit that that's had on rates, on average, close to 47% reduction in gas purchase costs, direct pass-through savings, yes, to citizens of the great city of Philadelphia. We should recognize also here this morning that gas sales fluctuate from year to year, based most notably upon weather. And Chairman Brown, you know a little something about weather this past weekend.
And shoveling.
And shoveling. Thank God for snow blowers. We recognize also as a commission the significant financial safeguards that are associated with the distribution system improvement charge. We feel very confident that in approving this increase in the DISC, again, will help this utility like we did back in the 2010 time period where we approved a $68 million emergency rate relief request, which that single decision helped stabilize the balance sheet of this gas distribution system, and also, more importantly, help lower the cost of capital to the city of Philadelphia, because that single decision helped gain a credit notch for PGW. And I see their esteemed counsel in the audience, and he is nodding his head in agreement with that decision that was led under then Chairman Jim Cawley. So approval of the revised DISC will not completely resolve the infrastructure problems with PGW. And I think it's laudable that, again, we're going from 86 years to 48 years. I've often been criticized as being an impatient regulator, but I'll take today that we are moving the needle, we are creating safety metrics, and we are bellying up to the bar as a regulatory agency to help this entity move forward in accelerated pipeline replacement, which I think is a win-win not only for the city of Philadelphia and the ratepayers of PGW, but it demonstrates the collective efforts of this commission. Now, one issue that I think needs to not go unaddressed here this morning, and I believe it's hampered PGW. And ladies and gentlemen, I think some of you know where I'm going with this, but it's called the multiple layers of bureaucracy in terms of its overall governance structure. Consistent with numerous reports, the Pew Charitable Trust Pennsylvania Economy League study. PGW needs to adopt a single independence governance structure versus this archaic structure of the Philadelphia Gas Commission coupled with the Public Utility Commission. And I think at the end of the day, it is absolutely critical for this newly elected mayor, Jim Kenney, who's a good friend of mine, for his administration to move very quickly, whether it's the formation of a task force or some type of ad hoc committee that could strongly consider a board governance examination, and hopefully moving forward a discussion about adopting a model like every model here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where utilities have one regulator here in Pennsylvania and maybe a few at the federal level, the FERC and the FCC and others, that there be one regulatory agency tasked with the day-to-day regulatory oversight in setting rates, doing gas safety, versus this current model that's in place. And this has been a consistent theme from numerous third-party charitable trusts like Pew, economic development analysis groups like Pell, that have harped on this issue of board governance. In fact, even the Philadelphia Inquirer has made reference to this. So again, consistent with the PUC staff report of April 21st of this past year, we also contain numerous other recommendations for PGW, which to date, I want to note here this morning, have not been addressed except on a limited record in this case. PGW's response to some of these was noted that further study was necessary. One of the issues that continues to linger is the $18 million transfer payment that the Philadelphia Gas Works makes every year to the city of Philadelphia. I speak for myself and only myself here this morning, but wouldn't that $18 million be better served in pipeline replacement here this morning? $18 million that could go directly into accelerating this 40-year-plus replacement program, potentially getting it down by another 5 years. So I just share that. I'm sorry that I'm getting in touch with myself in this very complicated issue. But again, I want to urge Mayor Kenney's administration to carefully monitor and collaborate with the Commission on these important issues, very similar to what former Mayor Michael Nutter had done in working with this Commission. And Madam Chairman, I'm going to vote yes here this morning with the caveat that I dissent from the denial of the reconciliation opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Powelson. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion passes 5-0, noting the partial dissent from Commissioner Powelson.
Continuing with the presentation of carry-in agenda items, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the staff recommendation in the proceeding involving the emergency petition for supersedious of Hyco Energy, LLC.
Do I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Whitmer, second by Commissioner Powelson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
And on page 2 of the carry-in agenda, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the recommendation of the Evaluation Committee with regard to their selection for an evaluator, a statewide evaluator for Act 129.
Do I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Powelson, second by Commissioner Coleman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, and Commissioners, that does conclude the presentation of agenda items.
Thank you. Do you have any further items to bring to our attention?
Just one announcement, Madam Chairman, and that is to remind the audience that copies of the various motions and statements introduced today will be available in the Keystone Building immediately following public meeting.
Thank you. We do have 2 additional items or statements that will be made after we gavel out of the meeting. So at this time, the meeting is adjourned.